Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our webinar. First of all, can we make sure that you can hear us and see our slides? If you can just type yes in the chat box, that would be great. Smashing. So it's good to see so many of you able to join us tonight. My name is Debbie Walmsley.
And my name is Sue Quigley. Debbie and I are both personal coaches for professional women, and we provide VIP coaching days, training workshops, and public speaking. This is the first webinar in a series of 4 entitled Being Your Best You, and we've designed these with women like you in mind. So over the next 4 webinars, we're covering topics such as positive self-promotion, taking back control, increased charisma, and personal impact. Tonight we're going to be looking at the importance of valuing yourself, having healthy personal boundaries, and why it's good to take a compliment.
As Sue said, we've designed these webinars with women like you in mind. Drawing on our own experiences and expertise, we're going to address some of the situations and issues that we've all come up against. Issues that make us feel worthless, undervalued, lacking in self-esteem and confidence. They end up making us feel miserable and angry with ourselves and the world.
We're going to be sharing with you how subtle changes can vastly improve the quality of your life. We'll share some examples and exercises for you to try out, which when followed correctly and with intention, will give you the skills that will improve your experiences and in turn change the results you're getting in life for the better.
Now, we mentioned intention there. Everything we do starts with an intention, and we would like to invite you right now, for the next hour at least, to set the intention of just throwing caution to the wind and do something new. Even if we suggest something that you may not believe will make a big difference, have a go, decide that you will do it, and apply the techniques suggested.
So whether you've joined us on this webinar out of curiosity, or maybe something in your life is just not quite going right for you, in order for that something to change, you have to decide to do something different now. And this old saying is so true. If you carry on doing what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got.
By participating on our webinars and using the tips and skills we're going to suggest, you will start to experience changes. You will start to feel different. These positive changes will include increases in your confidence and self-esteem. You will start to take control of your reactions, your emotions, and ultimately your life. You will be able to set powerful boundaries and rediscover that valuable me time once more. When was the last time that you had that? Your relationships with yourself and with others will improve, and you will be more comfortable in your own skin, being your own authentic self.
So for about the next 45 minutes, we're going to be looking at how important it is to respect and value ourselves. We'll learn that by taking personal responsibility for our emotions, we can start to gain more control over our lives and therefore the results that we get. We will also look at personal boundaries, why it's important for us all to set clear, healthy boundaries, and how this can actually lift our self-esteem and gain respect from friends and work colleagues. And we're also going to look at compliments. How do you take them? And what can that actually mean for you and the person giving you the compliment? And how can you start to view compliments in a different way?
Sounds great. Shall we get started, Sue?
Yep, I think we should get things underway now.
Right, now, we all know that there is nothing worse than feeling less than, don't we? And we've all felt that before, that horrible feeling of feeling undervalued. It doesn't matter what you do, it's just not enough. Feeling that you're not good enough. Sue and I believe that everyone has all the ability and everything they need to take responsibility, to feel fabulous and to be successful, to feel valued and respected. And whilst that's true, we also know that sometimes it just doesn't feel that it could be that easy, does it?
So imagine now that you've gone out clothes shopping and you pass by a shop with a brightly coloured coat in the window. It's not something you would normally wear, but it takes your eye. So you go into the shop and have a closer look. And when you try it on, you like it so much that you decide to buy it and wear it straight away. And as you leave the shop, you meet someone you know who does a double take and says, "Hi, wow, that's a great coat. It looks terrific on you. It really suits you." Well, obviously, this pleases you immensely, makes you feel great, and you carry on going your way. And a little further down the road, you meet a couple of other friends that you know. And this time the reaction is slightly different. "Ooh," says one, "that's a bit bright, isn't it?" And the other continues, "Well, I suppose it's a nice colour, a bit bright for me, but I suppose it suits you." Obviously, this, compared to the first one, is a bit disappointing, but you carry on as you do, wishing you felt just a little bit as positive as you had in the first place. And a few moments later, you meet a third friend who stares at you, starts laughing and says, "Oh my goodness me, how much did you pay for that?" "I'll just go and get my sunglasses." "Oh my goodness, don't tell me you're going to a fancy dress party." And they carry on laughing and you carry on walking.
I remember my granddad telling me a true story. It's a story about an old Cherokee Indian. One day, this old Cherokee was with his grandson, and he said to his grandson, "My son, there is a battle of two wolves going on inside us all. One is evil. It is anger, jealousy, greed, resentment, inferiority, lies, and ego. The other is good, it's joy, peace, love, hope, humility, kindness, empathy, and truth."
Now, Debbie, have you ever had this situation? You and a colleague have attended the same meeting, and you both come out of this meeting thinking, well, you come out of the meeting thinking it went badly, and yet your colleague thinks it went well.
Oh, gosh, yes, I can resonate with that.
So it's the same meeting, the same situation, and a totally different experience. You see, it's how we react to and interpret what went on in the meeting that determines how we think about it, and in turn creates our feelings and experience of it. It's easy to think that any negative feelings we have come from circumstances or situations that we have no control over. We can easily attribute them to something going on around us. My boss doesn't appreciate me. I get talked over in meetings. My views aren't appreciated. I'm a woman in a man's world. I feel undermined. But take a moment and think, where do those feelings actually come from?
These emotions and feelings we have about situations or circumstances that happen, and also about ourselves, actually come from inside us. We may think it's because of something someone said to us or something that's happened to us. And at that time, that emotion can feel very real. But in every instance, without exception, those feelings have come from what we're thinking in the moment.
We run our lives day to day with things happening to us, and we swing from one mood to another. Hurt, anger, stress, guilt, and if we're lucky, happiness, and relaxed. And we attach those feelings to the situations, thinking it's the situation that's making us feel this way. But it's not that way. It's not that way at all. How we feel is down to what we're thinking about in that moment, always and without exception. How we feel is nothing to do with what's going on around us or our personal circumstances. It is simply that moment to moment we're feeling our own thinking. That's all.
We're just thinking thoughts which make it seem that way. Attaching feelings to situations can become a habit too. So when we're faced with the same situation once again, and we think we can have that same old feeling as well. So what if we could change those negative thoughts and emotions? That would be good, right? Because if our feelings come from what we're thinking, then all we have to do is change our thinking, and hey presto, our feelings have changed too.
So let me get this right. If we just think positively about something, then we'll feel positive too?
Well, yes, that is true. But let's be honest, if we could just snap our fingers and do that, we would all be happy. And to be honest, this wouldn't be a very long webinar, would it, Sue?
No.
The good news is we can do something about it.
So think about this. Say something happens in my day. I'm on my way to a meeting, perhaps to meet Debbie, and run into an unexpected delay, probably traffic problems. So I have a choice. I can instantly decide whether it's okay or not. I can be angry about it, or I can think it's an opportunity. In other words, I interpret the event, and I attach my own meaning or significance to it. For example, I could think, this is absolutely awful, this is dreadful, it's going to completely mess up all my plans for today. And then I'd start to feel emotions about what had happened, and those emotions would depend on the importance that I'd attach to that event. So now I'd be sitting in my car, resenting the traffic problems, imagining all sorts of unpleasant consequences as a result of it, and I'm gradually getting tense, impatient, and angry. Of course, I don't really do this consciously. It happens in a fraction of a second, and it happens automatically. It's also quite personal. How I respond would be very different to how Debbie or any of you may choose to respond. The meaning that I'm attaching to the event is just how I've always done it. It's just a habit. Debbie, can you think of any other examples?
Yes, actually, yes, I can. And a very real example for me is getting feedback about my work from my manager or colleagues. Now, they may pick up on something that I've overlooked or an error I made, and that might be really quite important. And they may have done that with the very best of intention and could be just trying to help me. And it would, after all, improve my work. Yet, I have a whole range of interpretations that I can choose from. I could be thinking, more likely as well, I could be thinking, oh God, she's always picking on me. Or I might think, she thinks she's so superior. Who does she think she is? When in fact, I could also think, great, if I can improve on this, then my work will get even better. Or I could even think, God, that's really helpful, and she's always ready to help me improve my skills. You see, an event does not have a built-in meaning. It only has the meaning that we decide to attach to it. And then that meaning will give us our feelings about that event, simply based on how we've interpreted it. You know, Sue, it's really quite interesting. This attaching meaning process is not anything new. It's been around for years. And over 400 years ago, Shakespeare recognised the same process. And in one of his famous plays, he has Hamlet remarking, "For there is nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so." And no doubt there's been earlier writers who have also described it. But apologies for my bad acting, and I do say I am not going to be giving up the day job.
So attributing meaning or significance to events has a huge impact on us. After all, our habitual way of attaching meaning actually determines how we emotionally and behaviourally respond to what's happening in our lives. We all do it. We go through life deciding what each event means and then have feelings based on what we have decided. It happens quickly and quite thoughtlessly. It's quite simply a habit we've picked up over the years. And how we do it varies from person to person, but each person's style of interpretation will be fairly consistent because it's a habitual, automatic process.
Let me give you some examples. People can either be optimistic or pessimistic. Optimists, in the iconic words of Monty Python, always look on the bright side of life. But you're safe, I'm not going to sing this evening. Pessimists, on the other hand, only ever see the negatives in life. And I'm sure we've all met people like that. There are people who regularly see risks and threats and dangers in everywhere they go. Others are always on the lookout for opportunities around every corner and in everything they do. We're all different, yet we all know, don't we, that how we interpret an event is very real. It's the truth, it's our reality. And that's because for us, that's how we've always functioned. So therefore, how I interpret something is very real for me. It feels perfectly valid. Yet to somebody else, it may appear quite bizarre. It could even appear irrational.
So what can we actually do about this? Well, first off, it's a good idea to begin noticing just how much attaching meaning we do in our everyday lives. This brings the habit into conscious awareness, so we can begin being more choosy in how we interpret events, and therefore changing the emotional reactions we have to them. So start by recognizing the habit, and for a few days notice your attaching meaning habit. Does it have a tendency to be something risk-averse, fatalistic, pessimistic? Does the habit actually enhance your life? Does it enable you to look on the bright side of things and look for opportunities in seemingly unpleasant events? Does it result in an open rather than a suspicious approach to new acquaintances?
Once you've recognized the habit, remind yourself it's just a thought. When you find yourself having negative feelings about someone or after a conversation with somebody, track back and try to discover what significance you attach to that event or that conversation. And then ask yourself, what other possible ways or meanings are there of interpreting this event or conversation, or even interpreting someone else's behaviour?
You know, I used to keep a jotting pad with me to note my moods. Honestly, I can remember a time not so long ago when my life seemed so bleak and I really wondered whether I would ever be stress-free and happy. So I started to note down my feelings with some skepticism, I have to say. And it was only when I read the notes back to myself a few days later that I spotted a pattern. And as hard as it was to admit at the time, I saw that I was the pattern. The self-destructive thoughts and stressful thinking all came from my own panicked thinking in the moment. And looking back at the events afterwards that I thought were causing that thinking, I saw a totally different perspective. And I realised then how I could have reacted differently and ultimately enjoyed those moments much more.
And that's it really. It's mainly a matter of raising your awareness of how you go through your day. Doing this for a few hours after this webinar is going to be really interesting, and Sue and I really encourage you to do this. Doing it for a few weeks, well, that could be life-changing. So, what other ways can we make a positive improvement in our life? How can you take another step towards taking responsibility for your life?
So do you feel you have control over your life? Or do you live your life according to the whims, desires, and demands of others? By accepting and taking responsibility for ourselves, we can overcome our limitations, change unwanted behaviours, and create what we actually want in life. It's also about taking responsibility for how people respond to you. Now, that may seem a bit way off right now, but consider that if you do something that turns out really well, you pull something off at work that's really successful and get loads of praise for it, you know you're responsible for that outcome, and you fully accept all the consequences of your actions and behaviours that led to that successful result. Acceptance of personal responsibility begins with feeling strongly that you are responsible for all areas of your life, especially emotionally and physically. And if you can accept and firmly believe this, including the downs as well as the highs, then you're in great shape for real accomplishment of all your aims and purposes in life. So as well as taking responsibility for the successful outcomes, take responsibility for those that don't turn out so well.
You see, if you think whatever happens to you is beyond your control, that fate somehow causes and controls all events that happen to you, and that you cannot change or control the way things happen, then you will go through life allowing others or other external events to decide what will happen to you. You let your life follow blindly along some random path. So if we feel undervalued, not respected or appreciated, how are we responsible for that?
One of the key factors of how we perform in life is not defined by what actually happens to us, but rather how we respond to the events that life puts in our way. If our relationships with others are not going well, as hard as it might feel, we need to examine our own behaviour first. It is often the case that people we interact with will mirror our attitude at a subconscious level. So if we're angry or full of resentment, this may come across in our words and body language. Sometimes we don't need to even say a word, and we'll receive an angry or resentful response. Yet if we choose to approach the situation with a more positive and open frame of mind, the outcome will almost certainly be considerably different.
It's easy to get really upset or angry with what we would label as other people's faults. But are they their faults, or are they mirroring our own faults? By choosing to approach a situation with a different feeling, we're assuming control of that situation, and in turn, we're determining the outcome for ourselves.
So rather than being at the effect of a situation or someone's behaviour, we start to be the cause of our own positive outcomes. So now take a moment. I'm going to be asking for some comments now, if you would. I'd like you to take a moment and think about yourself. We all have an inner voice. What do you say to yourself? And if you want to post those on the comments, we'd be glad to see them. What do you say to yourself, and how do you talk to yourself? And please be very honest. Do you value and respect yourself? Do you look in the mirror and appreciate everything you see there? So thank you. We've just got some comments coming in now. And we've got another Sue B. Hello, Sue. Nice to connect with you. You say, you always think I'm not good enough, or I feel a fraud. Well, yes, actually, that one resonates with me a little bit on the fraud front. How many times have you thought that? And we've got a couple here that are the same. Bethany and Louise, hello, ladies. You both say, I'm not slim enough. Gosh. Well, that's something we've heard before, I think, from both Debbie and I. But you know what I'd say to that? Compared to who?
Yeah. Typically, our own thoughts, when we speak to ourselves, they're never very complimentary. We typically say to ourselves, I'm not good enough. No one will be interested in me. I'm not interesting enough. I'm not intelligent enough. We all have these thoughts.
We are frequently very harsh on ourselves. We wouldn't talk to our friends the way we talk to ourselves. And some of the comments there, I'm not good enough, I feel a fraud, I'm not slim enough. Would we actually allow somebody to say that to our friends? You're not good enough, you're not slim enough, you're a fraud. We wouldn't accept anyone speaking to our friends in this manner. So why do we speak to ourselves so harshly? It's important to challenge these thoughts when we have them. Realise that you do not have to believe them. And make an intention to bring to mind evidence or perspective that question these negative thoughts. Be open to the possibility of change and a more positive perspective. You see, you can't expect anyone to love, value, respect, or appreciate you if you don't feel that way about yourself. It's crucial that you value yourself if you want others to see you as valuable. Having said that, I know we can find that this is easier said than done, but there are ways to recognise our value and then project that worth to others without the appearance of ego and arrogance.
So often we are under the misapprehension that the more we do for others, the more we give others, the more they will like us. Or the more we love other people, the more we will be loved in return. And that's simply not true. The reality is that behaving like that, when we give more, when we love more, will most likely lead us to being taken for granted and will lead to others not thinking very highly of us. People who don't have a good sense of their own self-worth often spend time comparing themselves to others. They say things like, she's better than me. She always finds it easy to talk to strangers. She's so much more confident in meetings than me. And things like that. When in fact, we would be so much better focusing on our own unique qualities and what we do well. Whenever you compare yourself to others, you risk losing your identity and undervaluing yourself. So ladies, instead of comparing yourself to others, focus on spending time developing your own skill set and characteristics that you naturally have. And you know what? If that little negative committee, as I call it, pops up, you get those negative thoughts come up in your head, try this little trick. First of all, recognise that voice. Is it your voice or someone else's? I know for me, sometimes it's my mother's voice. But when that voice comes up, just try turning the volume down or moving it into the distance. When you can't hear it, it won't have the same impact.
So, Debbie, what I'd like to say to you is, what does that voice say when someone compliments you?
Oh, so when I get a compliment, when I get a compliment, that's really difficult because a lot of the time I get quite embarrassed. Sometimes I'll even look over my shoulder to think, who are they talking about? They can't possibly be talking to me. So it's really difficult sometimes to take a compliment.
So that's my question to us all. How do you take a compliment? What do you say when a colleague at work praises the work that you do, or when someone gives you a fabulous comment about how you look? Do you accept it and say thank you, or do you try to dumb it down in some way? You know, I've certainly noticed in the workplace that women, myself included, I have to admit at one time, are usually reluctant to take credit for what they've achieved or accomplished. How often do we say we did this, or credit the team or other colleagues rather than claiming I made this happen? Well, here's the thing. If we can't speak powerfully or compellingly enough about our own accomplishments, I can guarantee no one else will. And consider this. When you push back on a compliment or dumb down some positive feedback you've been given by a colleague, you're actually hurting that person's judgment. And it's a slap in the face for the person who's taken the time and trouble and had the confidence to give you that compliment in the first place. So when you're next given a compliment, consider it as being given a gift. If that compliment were given to you, all wrapped up nicely with a gorgeous big bow, how would you receive it? Would you say, no thanks, I don't think so?
No, certainly not. If somebody gave me a nice present, I would smile and say thank you.
So from today, decide that you'll take credit where it's due. Whether that is about some work you've completed or the dress you're wearing, take the compliment, smile and say thank you. Valuing yourself enough to accept and believe you deserve those compliments is a step towards creating your own healthy boundaries.
And one of the other steps to truly valuing ourselves, to truly valuing ourselves is to ensure that we set those clear boundaries, both with ourselves and with others. Now, boundaries can be physical or emotional. But think about this. Chances are that if you've been feeling a little emotionally drained, or you find yourself responding to everybody else's needs as if they were your own, maybe you just find that your time is not your own anymore, then it is highly likely that you have not set any boundaries, or if you have, they've been crossed. Now, two main reasons why we can find it hard to set and stick to healthy boundaries: fear and guilt. We fear rejection or confrontation, so we conform or say yes to things we normally wouldn't go along with, not wanting to argue, or preferring to have a desire for a quieter life. We may feel guilty if we say no because we don't want to hurt someone's feelings.
But it's important to understand that boundary setting is not about being rude or difficult. When done in a positive and respectful manner, boundary setting actually increases our assertiveness and can be effective for all parties. It's never too late to learn how to set healthy boundaries. Most of all, you can be clear about your boundaries without feeling guilty. So think now about what you would like your boundaries to be. What are your non-negotiables? What matters to you? And let us know what you'd like to set now. And again, type up your comments.
Yeah, we'd love to hear your comments about, have you tried to set boundaries? And if so, what are they? So have you ever tried this? Have you ever had boundaries? Tried to set healthy boundaries?
Yeah, I set one quite recently. I love Zumba, and my Zumba classes start at 9:30 in the morning and last for an hour. And what I get from them is I feel great. It's such a good laugh, and I feel so energized and good afterwards. You know, it's just a feeling I absolutely love. But I resisted going because I thought, well, it's 9:30, I should be doing some other work in the day. And then I would spend that hour just feeling really resentful about not being able to go and ploughing through my work as usual. So I've set that boundary now that I actually go. I don't have to tell people I'm actually going to Zumba, but people know that on those days between 9:30 and 10:30, I'm not available.
Oh, we've got some great comments coming in. Thank you.
Let me just have a quick look at those. So there's Kate. I like time for meditation, but I don't make the time. Oh, that sounds familiar. It clears my head and helps me de-stress. Well, that is really important. Lucy likes to get out for a run. Oh, and here's a nice one. Helen likes to make time for date night with her husband. Well, that's perfect because those are the things we often neglect. Thanks for those, ladies. Those are brilliant.
Yeah. The other boundaries, the other non-negotiables, ladies, should be to include time out that's important to you, for you to recharge your batteries, to get some me time. It's really valuable. Time that is important for you to gain your sense of self. Now, whether that is, as some of our comments have said, it could be meditation, it could be going for a run, a Zumba class, or it could be simply sitting down with a favourite book. Whatever activity makes you feel good about yourself, you should do it. Time for you is so important, so make sure you set time aside to ensure that it's factored into your week. And remember, do this guilt-free.
The way to think about this is that when you show up either at work, in your role, or as a wife or a mother, you want to show up as the very best version of yourself. This is especially true in our work, isn't it? You want to show up being the very best version of yourself because you know then that everything you do will be the very best you can do it. We all know when we feel frazzled, overworked and stressed, we're not operating at our very best. So if taking time out to do something that matters to you, that makes you show up as the very best version of yourself, then do it. And once you've set the boundaries, the challenge is then for you to ensure you stick to them. But I promise you, once you set clear, defined boundaries for yourself and others, you will start to value yourself more. And in turn, others will too.
So let's just have a look at what you can expect from setting boundaries. What are the positives that you can get from setting boundaries? Well, one of them is you will know exactly who you are. When you have a clear picture in your mind of who you are and how valuable you are, whether you're in a relationship or not, whether it's at work or not, you won't accept any bad behaviour.
Know that you deserve to actually have personal boundaries. Everybody does, you know.
Know that your feelings are just as important as the feelings of the other person.
And know that it's okay to say no, not just for the sake of saying no, but if you feel like a personal boundary is being crossed, step back and say no.
Know that, even if you're in a partnership with another, you're a separate individual responsible for your own life. just as that person is responsible for their own life too.
Sometimes it can be hard for others to accept that you are setting limits, especially when you haven't done it before and you've let them get away with crossing your boundaries or bad behaviour in the past. But be patient and set limits anyway. If there's a true bond of love, your partner and your friends will be okay with it, and your bond will actually grow. If they aren't okay with you setting personal boundaries, well, that's another story, isn't it? If you don't have personal boundaries that your work colleagues, friends or partner respect, your relationships won't be the best. To have the best relationships, you need to be your best. Respect yourself, value yourself, and see your boundaries as setting a clear guideline to others as to what is acceptable to you and what's not.
So we've sort of had a quick whiz through this evening. We've covered quite a lot. Let's have a quick recap about what we've talked about. We started off by saying that everything starts with an intention. And if you want something different to what you've got now, you've got to do something different. We've looked at how our emotions and our feelings are linked.
And we've looked at how taking responsibility for how we interpret events, we can enable us to have choice. How we can take back control of our lives by valuing ourselves and take those compliments with the good intention that they were intended. And we finish there with the importance of setting personal boundaries.
Now, by being more aware and making a conscious effort to change, you will gain more respect from those around you. You'll be able to set clear, healthy boundaries, and this will enable you to be more confident and to lead the life that you really want.
Of course, you don't have to change. But as we said, if you want things to be different, you have to do something different. And the choice is yours. What do you want in your life?
The little boy thought for a while about what his grandfather had said. And then he looked up at his grandfather and asked, "Grandfather, if there's a battle of two wolves inside us all, one is evil and one is good, which one wins?" The old man looked at his grandson and quietly replied, "The one you choose to feed."
So you've bought this amazing brightly coloured coat and you've passed 3 friends who gave differing opinions. 1 rather liked it, 2 thought it was okay, and 1 just completely laughed their head off. Now some people may question which of those people were right. The one who said it was great, the couple who thought it was a bit bright but it probably suited you well enough, or the one who thought it looked like a fancy dress outfit. Sadly, many people, if not most, will plump for that third one. In truth, you should believe none of them. You bought that coat because you love it. Trust your judgment. Just and always believe in yourself.
We'd like to say many thanks to all of you for connecting with us through this webinar this evening and for all your contributions while we've been on the air. You'll see on the slide here how you can keep in touch and be the first to hear about our news and register for up and coming webinars in our Be Your Best series. Just like to say thanks very much for joining this evening, and we very much look forward to talking to you again on our next webinar, which is going to be on the 17th of December. And it's all about rapport, charisma and questions. This webinar will really enhance your confidence and give you great skills to be able to promote yourself at work.
But before we sign off, just one more thing. Let's make a clear intention to move away from devaluing ourselves and our fellow women. Let's choose to move away from feeling bad about ourselves and judging others. Look for the good in everyone, including yourself. And instead of always finding ways that we don't measure up, let's celebrate the things about women that make us unique, that make us who we are. We can celebrate who we are, that fact that each of us is good enough, just as we are, aren't we? Let's share our gifts and talents, compliment the other people in our lives when we notice something positive. And what is one small thing you can do today to embrace your individuality and celebrate yourself just as you are? So as Debbie said, thanks for joining us. We've really enjoyed this webinar. We've loved getting your comments, and we're open to further comments and feedback. So we'll send out a recording of this shortly afterwards and look forward to speaking with you soon. Bye now.
Thank you for joining us. Bye.